Well, guys, there's no doubt our next guest is the HBK of the media game, except he doesn't only break hearts, he breaks news as well. And boy, do we have some breaking news that we need to discuss. The news break kid himself, the NBK, Brad Okamoto, welcome back to Submission Rating. Look, you've even got the backwards hat on. I feel like we're back in the Attitude Era right now. Thanks for joining us.
I mean, we're friends now, right? It was just a casual conversation with the Submission Radio boys. I can look like I always do when I'm not on camera.
Yeah, 100%. He's just a sexy boy. He's just a
boy.
So
you're wearing pants and a shirt. That's the only difference. The hat stays on. The hat always stays
on. Speaking of sexy things, a young Las Vegas-based reporter reported something this morning. As Dennis mentioned, Jorge Masvidal versus Leon Edwards is officially off UFC 269 on December 11th. UFC's chief business officer Hunter Campbell tells ESPN, this is of course your tweet, Brett, you broke the news. Undisclosed injury for Masvidal, no word yet on whether it will be rebooked or UFC will move on. Before we talk matchmaking and all these things, and this is obviously not good news, but it's kind of exciting, and we'll get to that in a second. What do you make of the undisclosed injury? And I guess the fact that Hunter Campbell is the one reporting it. Look, by the time this comes out, let's be honest, Masvidal will have done 20 interviews. It'll be next week. But as of yet, no word from Masvidal. So what do you make of this?
I think it's the UFC knows that the fight is off, and I have a good relationship with Hunter Campbell. I talk to him pretty much every day, and I'm constantly asking him about things going on. We were texting earlier this morning, and then he gave me a call and said the fight's off. So I've reached out to Jorge's camp. They haven't commented on it, but with someone of Hunter's position and going on the record saying the fight is off, the fight is off. I hadn't heard any rumblings that the fight was off. I had been in contact with Leon's team. I'm sure we're going to get to this, but I had been in contact with Khamzat's team about something unrelated to this, and I had caught no wind of it. So I don't know if it was something that Masvidal had been dealing with for a while and then just let the UFC know, or if this was something that they were keeping under wraps. But yeah, this was Hunter calling me and saying that, the fight is off.
Okay, well, it's interesting that you mentioned that you spoke to Khamzat's team probably about a different matchmaking sort of opportunity here, but sort of break this down for us, because in a lot of ways, obviously this is heartbreaking because these guys had this rivalry. Obviously, you interviewed Jorge and there was that iconic moment, that after he sort of got into it with Edwards in the back that you guys shared. But in a lot of ways, people have really wanted to see Khamzat sort of take the next big leap in the division as well. So in terms of, and obviously Colby Covington now is out of the title race for some time, and he's got this rivalry with Masvidal himself. So in terms of matchmaking here, what are you predicting is going to happen? And do you think it's actually a possibility, if we're focusing just on this Leon Edwards fight for UFC 269, that Khamzat might be able to step up and the UFC might actually go for this fight to happen?
It seems perfectly possible to me. So much so that people are calling conspiracy theories on this, that Masvidal is not really hurt and they just want Khamzat to step in against Leon Edwards because the UFC was in love with this fight for a long time. And now that Colby's lost, Colby had made those comments at the press conference of like, hey, Jorge should just pull out of this fight and fight me. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist guy. I tend to think that Jorge does have an undisclosed injury. And this is all legitimate, but you got to point out the fact that it could work out perfectly, because as good as the Leon Edwards versus Masvidal fight was going to be, I know myself, and I'm sure you guys, and it just seemed like the whole sport was really excited about that it was overdue, that we've been waiting for that fight for a long time. It made sense for a long time. So finally, we're going to get it. As great as that fight is, I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, we'd love to see Leon Edwards and Khamzat, especially after what Khamzat just did in Fight Island. And we would love to see Colby Covington fight Jorge Masvidal because of the history there. So in a weird way, whether you think it's conspiracy or you believe, that it's all legit, the UFC might end up with two bigger fights, in my opinion.
It's interesting as well because obviously a lot of people are saying, Leon's kind of having a rough time in the division, and obviously the guy does deserve a title shot. But do you think that in a funny sort of turn of events, if he does fight Khamzat, in a way that is a better solution for him? Because if he was to beat Masvidal and Khamzat was to fight again, you never know, like a big Khamzat performance. Of course, the UFC are saying, Leon is next. But if Khamzat does win again, you never know, he might still surpass Leon and get that title shot. Whereas here, Leon has the opportunity to possibly beat Khamzat and secure that title shot indefinitely rather than fighting Masvidal.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he views it that way. I mean, you could put any of us would put ourselves in Leon's shoes and be like, what in the world, dude? Like, what do I need to do to get a title fight? It's not fair. And I mean, I think all of us can say it's not fair. The guy has won 9 fights in a row. But he has there were periods of inactivity. There was the Nate Diaz fight, which, I thought that Leon did what he needed to do per se in the Nate fight, and that he won and he dominated. But then getting caught there at the very end, like, it did ruin it, man. It did. Like, it sucks to say that for Leon's point of view, but there's just not a lot of hype behind that fight. And so I think you're right. Unfortunately for Leon, I think that he won't feel great about this reality. But if he doesn't take this fight, if the UFC offers it, which they have not yet, you know what I mean? When I talked to Hunter, he said that I don't know what we're going to do yet. Which this news is very fresh. We got to figure out what we're going to do. Khamzat's team, Khamzat immediately wants to fight, which should surprise no one. Khamzat wants to fight every weekend. But if the UFC does say, okay, Khamzat says he's ready to go and this is something that we're interested in, if they take it to Leon and he doesn't want to do it, he's well within his right to turn it down, but there are going to be consequences to that probably. The fact that there's not a lot of hype behind him fighting for the title, you can say that you're the number one contender all you want, but sometimes it doesn't matter. And if you turn down a fight against a guy who's really surging and who wants to fight you on short notice now, we all know what's going to happen there. I think Khamzat's going to kind of leap him an opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, going back to the Diaz fight, that was supposed to be Leon's crowning moment. He needed that sort of signature win against a big name. He got the win, but everybody just remembers that 5th round, basically. So against Masvidal, this is going to be, again, the guy who, fought for the title recently. Everybody knows Masvidal. If you beat him, great. That punches your ticket to a title shot. And so for him to fall out, it sucks. And for a guy in theory to be ranked, not very, I don't know what he's ranked right now. Do you know off the top of your head, Khamzat, what is he, around 11, something like that?
Khamzat, yeah, I think he's 10 or 11 after this last week.
Yeah, so for Leon to be fighting 11 is pretty shit given what he's accomplished in the division. But on the other hand, Khamzat's the hot ticket in the division. So if you're going to beat anybody and secure a title shot, yes, rankings may not tell the full story, but it's fantastic. It's probably not fair. And for Khamzat to, I guess we have to take a second to also appreciate, and again, this is if this fight happens, how quickly Khamzat has risen through the ranks. Do you think that if, say, Khamzat can get a win here, and this is all just a big if, it kind of works out perfectly for the division from the perspective that Kamaru Usman is kind of like desperately, I don't want to say he's looking for contenders, but he needs them. And he's talking about like, I want to fight, whatever makes business sense, which is a pretty clear message. He wants big fights that make him lots of money. And if you look in the division, that just isn't there. And no disrespect to Leon Edwards, but that's not a big money fight. That's he's the next contender kind of fight. And you got to really you got to look to other divisions to find Usman a money fight. So do you think this could be, in some ways a perfect scenario that maybe, I don't know, if Khamzat wins, maybe we see him versus Usman even early 2022?
Yeah, I mean, it all works out great for the division, for the champion. It just doesn't work out great for Leon because he's being asked to do things that he probably shouldn't need to do. But if you want to assign some blame to Leon, you can. You can. He was given an opportunity to fight Nate Diaz, who he was a massive favorite against. He wasn't able to finish him. He very nearly got finished himself in that 5th round, and he didn't really captivate the imagination of the fans. Even if that 5th round would have gone the way in which it had, I think if Leon was simply better on the mic or willing to do some things on the mic, that he could give himself some insurance against some of this bad luck. But it's not in him to do it. So, I mean, I feel bad for Leon in a very legitimate, genuine way. I like watching Leon Edwards fight. I think he's very good. I am interested in seeing him fight Kamaru Usman again. But the sport as a whole and the casual fan base that make up a lot of pay-per-views and a lot of money and business decisions that go into this are not feeling the same way. So it's not fair for Leon, but it is just the reality. It's the game in which he's playing, right? I mean, you decide to be an MMA fighter and you're in the UFC. More often than not, the UFC does stick to the rankings, and we see the fights that are supposed to happen. But in these certain special circumstances, when you got a guy like Khamzat who's flying up the rankings and making a name for himself, that's part of the game as well. And if again the UFC does offer him this fight, I think Leon's going to be under some pressure to take it.
And call me crazy, but I almost feel like a dominant win over Khamzat does more in the fans' eyes than if you beat Jorge Masvidal, who in a lot of people's eyes is a little bit diminished. But just on that fight, because that is just a few weeks away, And this is where it's a little bit unfair to Leon Edwards preparing for someone like Chimaev with just a few weeks to go. We already know, though, that Leon has a great wrestling base. It's not like he's somebody who's predominantly a striker who has to focus on their wrestling leading into a fight. But at the same time, the training camp for a Jorge Masvidal is completely different to a training camp for a guy like Khamzat. So if you just had to take an early look at this fight, I mean, very, very interesting fight if you look at it. Leon possibly one of the guys in the division with the best chances of sort of beating Khamzat outside of the champion. Who are you actually leaning towards if this fight does happen?
Man, I would, I don't know, guys. I saw Khamzat in person in his last fight, and it scared me. I mean, just being cage side and watching that guy do what he did, picking, Zhang Li up and carrying him to Dana White and just talking the entire time while he was doing it. I mean, that guy is a monster. But I want to say that Leon would be favored in the fight, right? I mean, just everything that he's done, he'd have to be a small betting favorite. I think I'd almost have to kind of, I mean, at the end of the day, I'd probably lean Khamzat just because there's just so much momentum in going in his favor. But Khamzat has not fought elite competition yet. He has not done that, and he is a dominant wrestler, but he only started training MMA 4 years ago. It was like 2017 when he walked into the gym and he had no striking training whatsoever. So to ask him to beat a guy like Leon, I don't know. I mean, I'm taking the easy way out here, but I really don't know. I'd have to think about it. There's part of me that wants to lean Leon because it's just such a huge step up for Khamzat. But then I just think about what we've seen from Khamzat. And it's just, man, who's going to stop that guy from doing that?
There is that McGregor-esque rise, that comparison where McGregor was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And people in the early days were like, you're crazy, man. You can't do that. And then he did it, became champion. People were like, holy shit, he backed up everything that he said. I actually feel like people kind of believe Khamzat a little bit more. Like people calling McGregor crazy. People are already like, yeah, no, Khamzat can do it. He can totally do it. And so if he jumps the rankings like this and beats Leon Edwards, just insane. The only thing is, what do you think about the weight situation? Such a quick turnaround for Khamzat. He's been traveling, went to Sweden. Do you think that could, play a bit of a factor? And obviously, the UFC would hate to do this at a catch weight. If for whatever reason, Khamzat said, hey, man, I need a few extra pounds, they'd be like, no way. And after what happened in Fight Island, what do you think about Khamzat's weight in this one?
I think it'd be fine because I think even when I was talking to his team this morning and we weren't talking about this, because I didn't know about it yet. I don't think anybody knew about it yet, except for maybe Masvidal and the UFC potentially. Khamzat's team was even asking me, when is the pay-per-view in December? Do you think we could get on it? They were asking me those types of questions, So this really does seem like it's coming out of left field. And for them to be asking, hey, could we get on the last pay-per-view before the end of the year? That to me shows that Khamzat really wants to get a fight in before the end of the year. I know he does because he's been telling his manager that all the time. And so if he wanted to fight at 170 pounds before the end of the year, then I got to imagine his weight is fine.
To me, that sounds like they know Brett runs things around town and they're like, Brett, can Khamzat be on the card? Brett's like, I'll get Dana White. And we don't want to speak to Dana White. We want to speak to you, Brett. Tell us Khamzat can be on
December 11th. Your first phone call is to Las Vegas to talk to me.
All right. So while we're asking Brett questions, Brett, do you think Jorge would do tough against Colby while he recovers?
Yeah, that's a heck of an idea. And I can guarantee you ESPN would love that. I mean, the ratings would be through the roof. And there were some rumblings about, that in the past. It sure would make a lot of sense. Yeah, that would make a ton of sense.
Yeah, so ESPN would be into it. The fans would be into it. We and Casper were sort of discussing this because we know Masvidal is not the biggest Covington fan, obviously. It's a huge rivalry, but he's sort of been hesitant to sort of throw fire on that rivalry because he doesn't want to get Covington extra eyes and extra attention. Do you think he agrees to this maybe because the UFC makes him an offer that he can't refuse? Or do you think it could be a situation where he's like, you know what, I have this rivalry with Covington, we're both recovering, but I don't want to spend a whole season with this guy. Like, I don't respect this guy. I don't want to give this guy anything extra.
I don't want to speak for Jorge, of course. Don't know what he's thinking in terms of that. But my read on that is that Jorge, from the moment he lost to Usman the second time, and then even the first time, he just wanted to get right back to the title. I mean, there was he could have started to pursue a money rematch with Nate Diaz, and he just wasn't interested. Every interview he's done, you've heard him say the same thing: give me the fight that gets me back to the title the quickest. And, I think that's why he was willing to fight Leon. And in the same respect, I think that's why he would be willing to fight Colby. So that's my guess on that, is that Jorge, has been there and done that with everything in the sport except for win a UFC championship. It seems to be genuinely something he really wants. And so if the UFC is telling him, hey, Colby Covington is, still has that high number next to his name, this is the fight that we want to do, I would tend to think that Jorge would do it.
Just quickly, we'll jump to Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez in a second, but you mentioned Nate Diaz. I wanted to get your thoughts on, obviously, Dana White saying that he wants Khamzat versus Nate Diaz. If, say, Khamzat does fight Leon, what do you think happens to Nate? Or do you think maybe for whatever reason the UFC would still prefer, we'd rather Khamzat versus Nate? What do you think of that fight and the matchmaking? Because it was met with quite a lot of backlash with people saying you're just trying to feed Nate to Khamzat because he's on his last fight in his contract, and there was a whole devaluing debacle and stuff. What do you make of that? And obviously Nate, not particularly interested.
Well, of course they are. Like sometimes we talk about the UFC trying to do that in terms of they're an evil empire now.
Yeah.
There's a de-escalation value in Nate. There's also an escalation value in Khamzat. So I see this and it's we love Nate Diaz and he deserves a say in his fight, and he immediately came out and was like, that's not a fight I'm interested in. And so I doubt you're going to see that fight. But for us to think that the UFC is just trying to do that only to put Nate Diaz down. Nate Diaz is a very, very important asset to the company. If they believe that he is leaving, then you got to try and make the most out of the last fight on his contract, right? I mean, the same you can't compare the first fight on a contract to the last fight on a contract. It's apples and oranges. I mean, we can say maybe if there was a fighters union and there's a collective bargaining agreement, it wouldn't be that way. But this is the way it is right now, right? So you have to kind of look through the lens of reality here. And the UFC is saying, okay, if it is the last fight on his deal, what do we want to do with it? Do we want to give him Vicente Luque? That's a fun fight, but it's not a money fight. And I don't know if they're looking to make Vicente Luque a superstar. They like Vicente Luque, you know what I mean? But if they can build Khamzat Chimaev with Nate Diaz as a promotion, of course you're going to do that. If they can put together a Conor McGregor trilogy fight, of course they're going to do that. So we're going to have to see how negotiations go with Nate Diaz and with the UFC. But I think it's just it's important to remember. I don't know, I feel like they start to get their feelings involved a little bit when it's coming well, look what they're doing to Nate. I get it. And Nate's a big boy though. Nate can come out and do an interview and say, I'm not doing that fight. This is just two business entities negotiating the last fight of his contract. So I don't know what's going to happen with Nate, but I never thought the Vicente Luque thing was all that likely because it was the last fight on his contract. And I don't think the Khamzat fight is all that likely because I don't think Nate wants to do it.
And it is a fascinating sort of situation where they're trying to prolong his exit from the UFC to possibly make this Conor McGregor fight a reality. So I wonder if they're going to be able to do it, because guess what? They offer him Khamzat and they have to offer him a certain amount of fights. Maybe that prolongs it for another little period of time and then something else pops up and then maybe McGregor's going to be ready for that trilogy. Who knows? But speaking of McGregor, Max Holloway is back this weekend against Yair Rodriguez, and he's sort of not saying that he absolutely wants Alex Volkanovski next if he wins. He's talking about stock and how big fights sort of matter more than fights with champions right now in this new era of the UFC. And he's kind of maybe even looking at a fight with McGregor if things go to plan against Yair. What do you make of sort of Max and his, I suppose, reluctancy to possibly fight Volkanovski next if he does win?
Why would he box himself into a corner, man? Keep all of your options open. And Max, if he goes out and beats Yair, and especially if he looks like he did in January, this guy's going to have options, man. As he's pointed out, he has a win over Charles Oliveira, the lightweight champion. A lot of people thought that he has a win over Alex Volkanovski, and there's an obvious trilogy to make there for a 145-pound championship. There's Conor McGregor coming back. And, if I were to make a list of the top Conor McGregor fights, Max knows that he's right there. He knows that he demands money. He knows that, Conor has fought him before. They've always kind of had this mutual respect. When you think about all the Conor McGregor ugly tirades on social media where he's gone after people and you're like, ugh, like the way he's going after him is just nasty. He's never done that with Max Holloway. I think that there's a mutual respect there. So, and I know that Max also entertains the idea of boxing, and I don't know the UFC stance on that is pretty clear when it comes to they're not interested in it. But I think with somebody like Max and the whole I'm the best boxer in the UFC type thing, if the right opportunity came along, I think it's something that they would at least entertain with Max, whereas they wouldn't really entertain it with anybody else unless it's Conor McGregor previously, right? So I just think that's a smart guy keeping his options open. I mean, I would still kind of peg the favorite if Max wins this weekend. And I was making kind of a list of what I think is going to happen next with him, I would still make the trilogy the favorite. But there's a lot of good options there, and all of them are really plausible.
Just quickly, Michael Chandler or Conor McGregor had some pretty respectful words recently. What do you think of that? Do you like that as a potential return fight? I almost feel like Conor's at the point where not too long ago, he was talking about Tony Ferguson, and people looking at that fight as kind of like, well, if you're going to rebuild yourself, maybe that's, somewhere good to start. A Chandler fight would be incredible though. But again, that's taking on one of the toughest guys and the toughest matchups in the division as well.
I mean, I want to hesitate the way I frame this, because I think Conor, has shown throughout his career that he'll take the right risks for the right kind of moment in his career. But I also think that he does, look at these matchups and he tends to take the one that he does think he's going to win. I think that he likes a certain opponent, he liked the idea of fighting Dustin Poirier. And I think it's because he had knocked him out or earlier in their careers. I don't think a fighter forgets that. And I think that he'd look at somebody like a Michael Chandler and be like, that guy gets hit. And I'll put him away with my left hand, and he'll carry that kind of confidence into any fight. I mean, I thought he was confident going into a fight with Khabib, he appeared confident to me. But I think when he's looking at his first fight back, then there is some of that comes into play. Like, give me a matchup that I can look good in. He picked Donald Cerrone, at the beginning of what was it, 2020. He picked Donald Cerrone when he could have picked Justin Gaethje, and Gaethje has made it very clear, like, I think I know why he did that, And so I do think that does play an element into who Conor wants to fight. And I think he would look at Chandler and think that he could beat him. Yeah. So I think Chandler's a possibility, but there's more money with Max Holloway. And again, he's already beaten Max Holloway before. So I would say Max Holloway is probably more likely than Chandler.
And I wonder after UFC 269, if Poirier loses, what's going to be happening with him as well. Obviously, he wouldn't mind a big payday, maybe another fight between those guys. They fight another 100 times. Just quickly, with Max and Volk, obviously, Alex Volkanovski had that really great performance against Brian Ortega, and I feel like he's got a lot more fans around the world after that win. How big do you think a Holloway-Volkanovski 3 fight can be compared to the first 2 that they had? And if he did have to sort of lean towards one person in this 3rd fight, because we see Holloway is always improving, Volkanovski's always improving, who would your pick be in this 3rd fight?
And just quickly before you go, Brett, it kind of reminds me of like Colby and Kamaru, where like if Volkanovski wasn't there, Max Holloway would most likely be the champion. They're not like number 1 and 2. It's almost like 1A, 1B. Yeah,
I agree with that. In terms of how big the fight would be, I think it would be pretty big. Like, it doesn't necessarily feel like it right now, but I think that's because of everything that we just talked about. Max is going to have other options. And quite frankly, if it's up to Max, I don't think Alex would even be his first option. So it kind of feels like, well, I'm not going to get excited about this until it's booked. But if they were to book a 3rd fight between them, I think the storyline is there. You can start to dissect the first 2 fights again. You can get people buzzed up. You can show them plenty of Max Holloway highlights, and you'd be like, look at how good this guy is, and this is his kryptonite. Alex Volkanovski has been his kryptonite. He's been able to just beat him, twice, and this is going to be his last shot. People love the drama of like, this is your last opportunity. That if you're going to beat this guy, you're going to prove that you're better and get your belt back, then this is your last opportunity to do it. So I think the fight would be pretty big. But I mean, if we're trying to compare it to Max versus Conor McGregor, or Max, moving up to lightweight even, and if he fought Charles Oliveira, the trilogy would be bigger. If you fought Dustin Poirier, that's probably bigger. So it's just all good options, man. It's all good options, but I think the fight would do really well. And who would I pick? You got to pick out Alexander Volkanovski, right? I mean, until Max can prove to get over the hump.
Respect on his name.
You got to pick him.
Yeah. I love it. Who are you leaning towards in Yair and Max this weekend? Do you think Max can land 900 strikes? 900.
That's what he's saying, right?
Jesus.
How many did he land? How many did he land last time?
744.
How much was it?
744.
I mean, I don't know.
Another 150. Jesus.
I don't know. I don't know how much more active he can be than he was in the Calvin Kattar fight, but I wouldn't tell Max that he couldn't do anything, man. That guy is impressive, and it's going to be a fun fight. I can't believe the betting odds are so lopsided. I know that Max would be a favorite, but did you see these odds? Like Max is like, what is he? Like minus 750? Did I see that right?
What were the? Yeah, I think last time they were even more. It was like minus 800. Let me check.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane, man. I mean, Yair is very good, right? Yair is no slouch. Yeah, minus 750 is what I'm seeing on some sites. Minus 700, somewhere around there. It's pretty lopsided, man. But I think it's going to be, obviously, I think it's going to be a fun fight between those two. I'm looking forward to it.
Max wanting to land 900 strikes is like me wanting to get 20,000 steps on my Fitbit. Like I put it on early in the morning and I just wear it around the house, just hoping to get those extra steps to make it to 20,000. So it's just Max running out to the cage, and as soon as it's like the bell rings, just starting to pop out the jab like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, I can do this, guys. But I just want to talk about Yair here for a sec, because I don't feel like enough people are focusing on him as well. If he does beat a legend like Max Holloway here, what is on the line for him?
Title shot. I think if he beats Max Holloway, he fights Alex Volkanovski, right? I mean, immediately that would become the biggest fight. I don't really know who you could say is more deserving of it, right? I mean, Ortega just fought, lost. Zabit is still MIA. Who else is up there? Like Giga is on his way up, but he's obviously not there quite yet. So yeah, I think it'd be Yair. I think that's pretty obvious. I think he would get a title shot if he beats Max.
Minus 680 for Max Holloway, plus 480. According to our good friends at MyBookie. So if you're looking to make a bit of extra dough, bit of cash to splash this holiday season, look no further than MyBookie AG, the best place to bet. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. How about this? If you sign up, you can double your deposit today with a code word submission. That's right. So if you guys sign up with a code word submission, you can double your first deposit and make some real cash on the fights this weekend, man. So many opportunities to make some serious money this weekend. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere with our friends at MyBookieCast.
100%. Also, it's the holiday season right around the corner, and it's that time where you're going to be racking your brain on what to get as far as gifts. The days of getting people socks and shavers and rusty razors are out the door. Look no further than the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0, the next gen, the evolution, the pound for pound king when it comes to personal grooming devices. 7,000 RPM of power, will not cut you with the skin safe technology, different guards for different lengths and textures for your boys, LED light, waterproof, wireless charging, dock station. How can you go wrong? This looks like some, spy shit. This looks like some James Bond 007 shit. Who, by the way, James Bond coming out today. Old Kaspooch going to the cinemas today. I'm excited, and I've got my balls shaved just for the occasion. So don't let your junk be for your eyes only. Don't scare the living daylights out of someone when you pull your pants down and reveal a forest. Make it a statement piece. Make it something to die for. Make it a view to a kill. Say goodbye and live and let die to your old rusty razor. Say hello to the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. You'll have balls smoother than Blofeld's head, and people saying, "Damn, those look like thunderballs." Remember, you only live twice, so don't miss out. Maybe you're looking for a gift for maybe your dad or a loved one. It's the perfect gift for the man who has everything where, the world is not enough. Diamonds are forever, and so is the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. Never say never again, and jump on this deal. It's cheap. We've got discounts for you. You don't need to be moon raking it in, so think quick. There's no time to die. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. Throw 900 strikes with your Johnson thanks to Manscaped, and use the code word submission with 20% off and free shipping today. Code word submission, 20% off, free shipping today. 900 strikes with your Johnson.
That's right, 900 strikes with the golden gun of grooming tools. But also, Yair versus Max Holloway this weekend. Holy crap, I'm excited. The question is, where are you going to watch it? Are you going to watch it at home by yourself? No, that's not fun. Get out there, go to the pub, see it with the boys, see it with your friends. Maybe you want to take the missus for a meal and watch the fights while she's, talking your ear off, and you can say, "Excuse me, Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez is on. I don't have time for any of this." But how are you going to find that pub? You don't want to be calling around looking for, hey, which pub is showing the fights, how many screens you got. That's where your good friends at Match Pint come in. Nice and simple. I'll show you through it. The perfect app that shows you pubs near your area by location and proximity, and they show you exactly who's showing the fight. So I've got it here in front of me. Look, UFC Fight Night prelims. Let's scroll across. UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Rodriguez. We'll go into that bad boy. Now, it shows me a nice juicy list of all these pubs in the area. What do we got here? The Amstel Club, the Osborne, Hotel Barclay. Let's see something else. What else we got? The Fifth Province. Let's go Kicks, which has some offers as well. And there you go. Tells you a bit of info about the pub. What else? It's got all sorts of fixtures as well. You've got offers. You can click the link. You can book a table straight from here. You can click the map and it'll show you directly where to go and the directions. I'm not going to click it so that you don't know where I live. But there you go, guys. It's that simple. Match Pie, best friends for sport. Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah, that's right, man. You can find great pubs, great offers, find out all the screens, all the information that you need, exactly like you said. And you guys can download it today by clicking the link in the description below. Download Match Pint today. Watch the great fights coming this weekend. A lot of fights coming up this month. Match Pint is your best mate for sport.
Yeah, that's right. Max versus Yair this weekend. But Brett, you were mentioning like the stakes for Yair. If he wins it, how exciting would that be, right? Like a win over Max Holloway is massive. I think if Yair can do this, I think people will be crazy excited for him versus Volkanovski.
And how does he win it? Probably by knockout, right? Like, what if he were to knock out Max Holloway? You can't.
Some kind of back elbow, like Korean Zombie again.
Yeah, I mean, if he wins, I mean, we're probably. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's not incapable of winning a decision, but we're probably saying his best chance to win this fight would be knockout, right? So, can you imagine if he were to knock out Max Holloway? I mean, yeah, he'd go right into a title fight with Volkanovski, and Volkanovski would be the favorite, but there'd be a lot of interest in it, you know, if he's able to create a highlight on Max Holloway.
I'll tell you what, the NBK has come through yet again on Submission Radio. Brett Okamoto, we appreciate you, sir. We like this backwards hat. It's a little bit sassy. It's very sexy, and it brings us a lot of excitement this week. Guys, make sure to follow the man for all the breaking news in the business, great articles, and, of course, fantastic interviews at B. Okamoto, ESPN on Twitter and Instagram. And, man, I can't wait to see some of the coverage that you've got coming up for UFC 269. Obviously, this weekend, of course, Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez, and there he is, Brett Okamoto. Thank you so much for joining us, man.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.